Dickie Dredd, New Age Travellers, 1960 to 1990. Chapter 7, Continuity and Social Collapse. New music out of the ashes. We'll briefly introduce a couple of bands that formed around the time. Radical Dance Faction, RDF, formed in 1986 in Hungerford, Berkshire, became one of the most distinctive and politically engaged bands linked to the UK Free Festival and Traveller scene. Founded by vocalist and lyricist Chris Bowser, RDF blended punk, dub, ska and reggae with urgent spoken word delivery and radical commentary. Their songs tackled subjects such as state violence, homelessness, war and the marginalisation of alternative lifestyles, earning them a committed following among anarchists, squatters and travellers. Chris's lyrics were shaped by direct experience and social observation. Hot on the Wire, one of RDF's best known tracks, addressed the 1987 Hungerford massacre, which Chris witnessed, leaving personal trauma with sharp critique of media sensationalism. RDF's message and sound were perfectly suited to the volatile political climate of the 1980s, where police repression of the travellers and festival goers was escalating. It quickly became a staple of the Free Festivals like Torpedo Town, Avon Free Festival and later Castle Morton. Their early tape releases like Borderline Cases 1988 circulated widely in DIY scenes. The 1990 album Wasteland, released through Southern Records, marked a peak in exposure, featuring tracks that expressed anger at militarism, social alienation and the erosion of community. The music resonated deeply with the peace convoy generation, and younger ravers alike, providing a soundtrack to resistance and survival at a time when alternative culture was under siege. RDF's live performances were, and still are, intense and confrontational, often taking place at squats, fields, anti-road protests and community spaces. They helped shape the cultural crossover between anarcho-punk, reggae and influenced dub scenes and the traveller world, often playing with bands like Back to the Planet and the Levellers. Though RDF disbanded in mid-1990s, they later reformed and continued to appear at underground festivals including Bid Theory and Equinox. RDF were not just entertainers, they were part of a movement. Their music stands against repression, calls for self-organisation and voiced the anger and hopes of a culture under pressure. While they never broke into the mainstream, RDF left a deep imprint on the counterculture. Their legacy lives on in the memories of muddy fields, sound systems and the struggle to live free. And just to note, this is not in the book, but Chris has recently had quite a bad accident involving a serious burn. So all the best to Chris and hope he recovers very well. The Levellers, formed in Brighton in 1988, emerged at a moment when the traveller and free festival scenes were facing heavy repression. Their music, a fiery blend of folk punk, protest lyrics and countercultural defiance, struck a chord with a generation of young travellers, squatters, ravers and political outsiders. Tracks like One Way, Liberty Song and Battle of the Beanfield became unofficial anthems for a displaced and defiant subculture. Around campfires at protest sites and in battered cassette decks on the road, their music gave voice to the anger, grief and stubborn hope of the scene. They weren't travellers themselves, but they were seen by many as allies, using their platform to speak truth to power, shout back at the tabloids, defend a way of life under siege. Their open support for protest camps, their willingness to play benefit gigs, their consistent critique of establishment earned them real credibility at the time. But not everyone has kept that admiration. As the band's success grew, playing stadiums, appearing on mainstream TV, and releasing through major labels, some of the traveller community began to feel let down. For them, the Levellers had gone commercial, lived in houses and lost touch with the rawness and risk of the life they once sung about. There's a lingering sense among older travellers that the band cashed in on the culture without paying the full price of living it. Still, many others defend them, noting that they never disowned their roots, that their lyrics still hold, and that very few artists ever stood in solidarity with the scene so publicly. Whether seen as prophets, performers, or just punks with fiddles, the Levellers remained a key part of the story, a bridge between the embers of the free festival movement and the wider public imagination. The chillum. Oh, that chillum. By 1988, the Battle of Stonehenge had entered its third year since the Beanfield. The official ban on gatherings remained in place. The fences were up, the exclusion zone was patrolled, but people kept coming. They came quietly on foot and in small convoys to Cholderton Woods, a few miles from the Stones. Tents, buses, and old Bedfords gathered under the oaks. Fires flickered, conversations whispered through the trees. There was no stage, no sound system, just a sense that it was time to walk again. Nevertheless, Poisoned, Electric Head, and Culture Shock managed to cobble together enough kit to serenade us at the start of the long walk. In the grey hours before dawn on the 21st of June, a procession began. Several hundred people set out across fields and footpaths, evading police checkpoints. Some accounts say it was around 150, others say there were thousands. From my own memory, I'd say it was about 500. They carried drums, staves, peace banners, offerings of herbs and fruit. One wore robes, another nothing but sandals and feathers. Dogs trotted alongside their owners. As the sun began to rise behind the clouded eastern horizon, the walkers reached the outer fences of the exclusion zone. There, denied entry, they formed a human circle. Police were out in force across the fields, in lines akin to something from the Battle of Waterloo. Mean-looking riot squads held the centre, and rows of cops of all kinds formed lines on the flanks. A druid blessing was offered. Someone sang. A woman poured water from Avon into the grass. The moment was quiet, reverent, and alive with defiance. From the hushed circle, a handful of figures broke away, climbing a perimeter fence, then attempting to scale the Hillstone, one of the great standing sarcens on the monument's outer ring. One fellow called Cosmic Kenny got up. Above him, a police helicopter hovered, floodlight blazing. He perched on the stone, was passed to chillum by Ian Orrible, whilst trying to help others up, including Corky, then relaxed and lit it. Smoke rose into the spinning air. He raised a peace sign to the helicopter above. Well, it may have been another sign, but it was difficult to tell. Onlookers below erupted into cheers of laughter. It was a moment of surreal clarity. One man in harmony, higher than the blades, calm amid state surveillance. He lit a spark the helicopter couldn't blow out, someone would later write, although he later received some brutal police revenge. Later that morning, a group of class war anarchists arrived, travelling incognito to dodge surveillance. They didn't come for ritual, they came to confront. Dressed in black, they marched towards the monument's perimeter, holding banners. Stonehenge belongs to the people. Festivals, not fences. They handed out leaflets, chanted anti-police slogans, and engaged in tense verbal standoffs with officers near the car park. For them, the stones were not just sacred, they were a symbol of enclosure, class power, and state violence. We weren't there for the ley lines, one activist later said. We were there because this is public land under police occupation. Class war's presence changed the atmosphere. The police, who had held a stiff but measured line during the sunrise vigil, suddenly grew more agitated. Officers in riot helmets formed up near the visitor car park, behind the tree line. New vans pulled in. The wind shifted, and above, a helicopter began to circle. As class war unfurled banners and shouted, "Whose land? Our land!" a command crackled through the police radios. Then they charged. Dozens of riot police rushed forward in a sudden burst, shields up, batons drawn. They targeted the perimeter where class war had gathered, but swept up anyone nearby, travellers, walkers, druids, even children. A man with a hand drum was knocked to the ground and kicked. A woman in robes was dragged by her hair from the fence line. A dog yelped as it was kicked aside in the confusion. I personally saw a copper hit the side of a pram with a baby in it as the woman ran for her life. Cries of "Peace!" and "What are you doing?" were drowned in the thud of boots on grass. Some people ran, others tried to form a human chain, but the panic spread faster than organisation could hold. Then came the police voice, cold, amplified, robotic. "This is a restricted area. You must disperse immediately. Failure to comply may result in arrest." The police helicopter hovering just above the field, blared the message over and over, its rotors drowning out every other sound. Dust blew into eyes, banners flapped uselessly, people stumbled onto one another, shielding their heads. It was absurd and terrifying, like something out of a dystopian dream. One witness later said it was like a war zone, but we weren't armed. We were just there to see the sunrise. People scattered. Some ran back to Cholderton. Others tried to slip through hedgerows, ducking into sheep fields and ditches. A few sat down and refused to move, but they were quickly arrested or hauled away. One class war activist was grabbed and held face down in a ditch for nearly 10 minutes. A young traveller had her camera smashed against a riot shield. A Druid elder was reportedly pushed into a patch of nettles, his ceremonial staff broken in two. At least 30 people were detained that morning, though exact numbers remain unclear. As the solstice crowd dispersed or moved back toward Cholderton, word spread quickly. Police were moving in on the camp. The walk back was quiet, sombre, and very long. As we walked, a single muted-voiced flatbed truck drove past. One fella on the back gave a finger up to us walkers. We all saw the ironic but funny side. By midday, around 200 officers, including riot squad, descended on the woodland. There was no formal warning, no eviction notice, just barking dogs, batons and megaphones. Tents were slashed or pulled down. Vehicles were searched, seized or towed, including several living buses. People were dragged out of their sleeping bags and pushed onto muddy tracks. A woman, trying to pack her child's things, had her bag ripped from her hands. A man was driven 10 miles away and left barefoot on the roadside. Police described it as a swift operation. Those who were described it as vindictive and unprovoked. Mainstream media coverage was minimal. A grainy photograph made it in the Wiltshire Gazette, a line of police beside a field. No names, no mention of the chillum, no sign of class war, no interviews with those evicted. But for those who came, especially those who had walked, the symbolism was enough. Despite 5 years of fences, surveillance and repression, the spirit of the Stones had not been crushed. Stonehenge 1988 became a touchstone for those reclaiming ritual and resistance in the late Thatcher years. The chillum on the stone became underground folklore. The walk from Cholderton set a blueprint for low-key pilgrimage tactics. The presence of class war introduced sharper political edges to the movement, although their violent actions were not universally supported by the travellers. The eviction, while brutal, proved that even with riot vans, they couldn't stop the sun rising.